Fellas, I'm kind of sick of making videos about UFC champions, matchmaking them, who would win between this champion and this champion. So I'm going to go on to the next best thing from UFC champions, which is number one contenders. I'm going to be matchmaking UFC contenders right now, number one contenders, by the way. So essentially fighters who pretty much are going to get the next title shot, or at least deserve the next title shot. And then we're going to be matchmaking them against contenders in the same division, but from 5 years ago. Now, bearing in mind, when I talk about the contenders from 5 years ago, I'm talking about their state 5 years ago. So I'm not talking about them now. I'm talking about them 5 years ago versus the current number one contenders now, just to clear up any confusion. But yeah, like I said, like always, let me know if you agree or disagree. But heavyweight, Tom Aspinall versus Stipe. Now, Stipe was the number one contender 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure DC was the champion and Stipe was about to take him on. And right now, obviously, it's Aspinall as the interim champion. I've got Aspinall winning this. Listen, if we're talking about who's accomplished more, Stipe Miocic, of course, is the heavyweight greatest of all time, unless you want to go Fedor or Emelianenko. But if we're talking about the UFC, it's definitely Stipe when it comes to achievements. But if we're talking skill, if we were to match them together, it's pretty hard to not argue that Aspinall knocks him out. I'm going to go round one. Listen, I'm not disrespecting Stipe. I understand that he was he is the greatest heavyweight of all time right now. And back in the day, I say back in the day, it wasn't even that long ago, but he was an absolute killer. He was absolutely great, but I've got Aspinall winning this. I just feel like Aspinall is part of this new breed of heavyweight, up there with people like Cyril Gane. I guess you can count Jelton Almeida, even though his last performance weren't amazing. Sergey Pavlovich, the new heavyweights that don't move like heavyweights. And as good as Stipe was, I just don't see a world where Stipe can beat Aspinall anywhere. When it comes to grappling, Stipe had some good wrestling, but Aspinall's an S-tier grappler. He's not just going to get out grappled. He's been training jiu-jitsu his entire life. And on the feet, listen, Stipe's got some clean boxing. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Stipe can't strike. I'm not going to say has, because listen, John Jones is fighting Stipe, and I'm not sure that the current Stipe is necessarily in the best, let's just say he's maybe not in the best state to be fighting in. But if we're talking about Stipe from 5 years ago, which isn't that long ago, but he was in a much better state. But yeah, Stipe from 5 years ago, he had some mean boxing. Aspinall, I mean, we've just seen him knock out Pavlovich. We just saw him knock out Tabura. I genuinely see Aspinall knocking him out in the first round. Maybe he takes it a little bit slow with Stipe. Maybe he ends up going into the second round like he did with no, he didn't even go. I was going to say Volkov. The Volkov was still a first round finish. It was just later on in the first round. The Orlovsky fight I'm referencing. But no, I see Aspinall knocking him out in the first round. I'm not going to say comfortably, because listen, it is Stipe Miocic at the end of the day. 5 years ago he was still amazing, but I just don't see a world where Stipe beats Aspinall or even lasts with Aspinall. He's too dangerous, Aspinall. He's the most dangerous heavyweight in the world right now. So I'm going to go Aspinall by stoppage in the first round, but that's not to disrespect Stipe. Obviously, he's achieved more than Aspinall. But matchmaking-wise, current Aspinall versus Stipe 5 years ago, I'm going Aspinall by a knockout in the first round. The fact that I have to predict what minute of the first round as well with Aspinall, but I'm going to go with the later minutes, around the 3-minute mark, 4-minute mark, but I'm going Aspinall by a knockout. Light heavyweight, Jamal Hill versus Alexander Gustafson. I'm going to go Jamal Hill again. Listen, this wasn't prime Gustafson. This wasn't the one that was boxing the bleeding head off of Glover Teixeira. Listen, maybe it wasn't. Obviously, Gustafson was in a much better state 5 years ago than he is now. I do see Jamal Hill finishing him, though. Jamal Hill, I feel like he's a little bit underrated. Maybe underrated's not the right word, but I feel like he's a bit disrespected. People are saying that he's not as good as people are just disrespecting Jamal Hill because he said he could dog walk Pereira. Well, maybe he didn't actually say he could dog walk Pereira, but you got what I'm saying. He said he could beat Pereira. I still think Jamal Hill's a huge threat. He's been racking up knockouts in the light heavyweight division. They both fought Glover Teixeira. Both of them did pretty good against him, even though Jamal Hill did fight an older version of Glover Teixeira, but at the same time, that was the Glover Teixeira that was champion, or at least was fighting for the belt. It's going to be a really interesting striking matchup, though, this fight. I can definitely see Gustafson winning the first few rounds, because Gustafson, he's got insane range control. He knows the perfect range to be at all times. Jamal Hill, he's also an amazing striker, knockout power as well. Hill definitely has the power advantage, but when it gets into the later rounds, now assuming this is a number one contender fight and not for a belt, I'm going to class these all as 3-round fights. I do see Jamal Hill finish him in the later rounds. I really do. Listen, Gustafson at this point, this was around about the time where he was getting beaten by Jones the second time as well. And from there, he went on a bit of a downfall. He was never the same. Maybe that was because of the Jones fight, and obviously maybe if he fought Jamal Hill, it would be a different story. But I see Jamal Hill finishing him, just boxing him against the cage and eventually TKOing him in around the third round, maybe later the second round. But I'm going with Jamal Hill by a late stoppage in the later rounds. yeah, just completely different eras of fighting. Gustafson back in the... If we were talking about Gustafson around 6-7 years ago, maybe this would be a different story. But 5 years ago, it was kind of the beginning of the downfall. I'm going with Jamal Hill. Middleweight. Now, middleweight was weird because there wasn't exactly like a #1 contender 5 years ago, because around this time, Whittaker had already fought Yoel Romero. And it's kind of hard to say who was the exact #1 contender, but I'm going to say Israel Adesanya, considering he ended up fighting Whittaker anyway. So Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya now. Unlike all the other matchups on this list, this could actually still happen. If Adesanya wins another fight, let's say he goes out there and beats Chimaev next year, and Dricus beats Strickland, they're obviously going to do Dricus du Plessis versus Adesanya, so this is still doable. But I still see Dricus du Plessis, and like I said, this is Israel Adesanya from 5 years ago, not right now, but I still see Dricus du Plessis just running through him. I think Dricus du Plessis, stylistically, is a nightmare matchup for Adesanya, just like Chimaev, because he's this absolute... First of all, Dricus du Plessis is strong. The way he kind of ragdolled Whittaker, took him down as well, tripped him, and everything that Dricus du Plessis did against Whittaker, I don't see how he struggles to do that against Adesanya. Adesanya has good takedown defense, but it's against Marvin Vettori. I mean, I guess you can say Derek Brunson from a while ago, but we're talking about Marvin Vettori in the second fight. I see Dricus du Plessis, if he wants to grapple with Adesanya, he can out-grapple Adesanya. And when it comes to the feet, there's so much more danger from Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis just needs to land that one shot on Adesanya to drop him. And I'm not going to say Adesanya is going to get slept, because the last time Adesanya got slept was back in the kickboxing days against, well, I don't even know what, probably the Pereira fight. But yeah, I see Dricus du Plessis, especially the fact that it's 2018 Adesanya as well, and he hadn't even had the adversity from the people like what's his name, Marvin Vettori. I just see Dricus du Plessis going up to 2018 Adesanya and just dominating him. Dricus by a late finish, I really do see that happening on the floor. Maybe it could even be a first round finish, but I'm going to go late finish by Dricus du Plessis against 2018 Adesanya. Welterweight, Balal Muhammad versus Darren Till. Now, this would be a really interesting matchup because the build-up would be insane. Darren Till would troll Balal Muhammad probably into retirement. Balal Muhammad is so easy to troll, and with a guy like Darren Till who does nothing but troll his opponents, the press conference for this, the lead-up to the fight, the Instagram post, the tweets, probably the best part of the fight, but the build-up to the fight. But the fight itself, it wouldn't be that interesting. It would be Balal Muhammad ragdolling Darren Till on the floor for 3 rounds, and it wouldn't even be close. Listen, this is a nightmare matchup for Darren Till. A dominating wrestler in Balal Muhammad isn't that interesting on the mic, isn't that interesting in the octagon, can strike as well, so it's not like if he doesn't take you down, he's screwed. It's a nightmare matchup for Darren Till. Balal Muhammad would just lay on him for 3 rounds, out-wrestle him for 3 rounds until he gets a decision win. I don't know what else I need to say. I see it being even worse than the Till versus Brunson fight, even harder for Till, especially the fact that it's 2018 Till as well, and not even the middleweight bulky Till. Yeah, I've got Balal Muhammad winning this pretty comfortably in 3 rounds. Unanimous decision. Maybe he could even finish Darren Till, to be fair. I could even see him getting a finish, maybe like a submission finish, because Darren Till's submission defense is terrible, but I'm going Balal Muhammad. Lightweight, Charles Oliveira versus Conor McGregor. I've got Charles Oliveira winning this one, but I don't think it's not really a confident pick, because if we're talking about the McGregor that was getting ready to fight Khabib, I think he would have been a lot more focused than he was, or than he is now. I think if we're talking about current Oliveira, he's still got... I can just see a picture of a world where Conor McGregor somehow chins Charles Oliveira, especially that McGregor that fought Khabib, because even though McGregor did get ragdolled and mauled by Khabib, it wasn't like McGregor looked absolutely terrible in there. People always, bring up the fact that McGregor looked horrible against Khabib. That wasn't McGregor's fault. That was because Khabib was just that good in the fight. If it's McGregor versus Oliveira, it's still a difficult matchup for McGregor, because Oliveira can strike, he's a dangerous striker as well, and he has scary submissions. Conor McGregor hasn't shown the best submission defense in his time. So I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira. The safe option is to go for Charles Oliveira by submission. I don't know what round, though, because I can easily just see him dropping McGregor, or at least getting McGregor to the floor and then finding a submission, but I'm probably going to be a later round, though. If I had to pick one, it's probably going to be in the later rounds, because we saw that against McGregor versus Diaz, McGregor versus Khabib. McGregor could get tired out and then get finished by Oliveira in the later rounds, but at the same time, we haven't really seen Oliveira go to the later rounds for a while. I mean, the last time Oliveira went in the later rounds was against Tony Ferguson, and listen, that was a while ago as well, so I'm going to go with the safe option of Charles Oliveira, but I could definitely see McGregor chinning him. Featherweight, Ilia Topuria versus Brian Ortega. I kind of picture this matchup as being a tougher version of the Bryce Mitchell fight. Obviously, Brian Ortega, his striking, I'm going to say it's better than Bryce Mitchell's. It's not insane striking. It's not some of the best in the division, but it's not terrible. And obviously, his submissions is what he's known for. He's an amazing submission artist. But Ilia Topuria, he's really smart on the ground. He's got amazing submission defense. He's amazing jiu-jitsu, amazing grappler overall. And that's what Ilia Topuria is really, like, his grappling's really underrated. So I don't see Brian Ortega somehow latching on a submission against Ilia Topuria. I do think it would be a striking fight for the most of the fight. And when it comes to striking, Ilia Topuria, even though Ortega's striking isn't absolutely horrendous, I just see Ilia Topuria outboxing him for the whole fight. And then I can just picture the end of the fight. Ilia Topuria gets his hand raised and Brian Ortega's face is just bloody and bruised. That's just how I see it going personally. I don't think Topuria would finish Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega is pretty tough. He's been through some wars. We saw the Volkanovski fight, the Max Holloway fight. Brian Ortega has been through some absolute wars, so I don't think he'd get a finish. On top of that, he did have a 5-rounder against Josh Emmett, and to be fair, he didn't finish, even though he was really, really close, especially in that 4th round to finishing Josh Emmett. He didn't finish Josh Emmett. So I'm going to say that Bryce Mitchell does survive, but it's going to be a dominating fight for Ilia Topuria on the feet. I don't see Brian Ortega submitting him or latching up a submission because Ilia Topuria's got some of the best submission defense. So I'm going to go Ilia Topuria winning this one. Now, so far, every single fighter of the current MMA has beaten the last one. But now we're going to the bantamweight division and I'm changing my mind. Cody Garbrandt versus Marlon Vera. Now, I'm going to go Cody Garbrandt. Now, partially I wanted to choose it because I feel like it'll be a bit of a bad video if every single one of the current champions were to win. But I feel like Marlon Vera, I don't want to say he's overrated, but I feel like he's not. Maybe he is overrated. I feel like he's not as good as people pay him out to be. He's lost multiple times in the UFC, especially like even his recent performances haven't been amazing. He goes out there, gets a really close decision win, and I do think he won the fight, but he got a really close decision win against Pedro Munoz. Before that, he got destroyed by Corey Sandhagen in the grappling department. Before that, he did actually get a knockout win over Dominic Cruz, but Dominic Cruz was piecing him up for the rest of the fight. If we're talking about Cody Garbrandt back in 2018, now this wasn't prime Cody Garbrandt, this was after a knockout loss. I do still think Garbrandt would win by decision as long as he doesn't get chinned, because we know about Cody Garbrandt's chin. It is a big if. But if Cody Garbrandt can just somehow, you know, this wasn't the time when he was getting slept by Kara France, but if Cody Garbrandt can somehow just avoid getting knocked out by Marlon Vera and just do what he did, even though it wasn't prime Garbrandt, it wasn't Garbrandt in the absolute pits of hell, I'm going to say that Garbrandt gets a decision win here. I do feel like Marlon Vera, the second you give him any sort of adversity, he isn't as dangerous as, you know, usual. The Dominic Cruz fight, Dominic Cruz started to slow down. The second Dominic Cruz started to slow down was when the head kick KO came. So I'm going to go Cody Garbrandt. I don't think Marlon Vera can beat Cody Garbrandt, especially the one from 5 years. If we're talking about current Cody Garbrandt, 100%, but Cody Garbrandt from 5 years ago, I'm not sure. I'm going to go Cody Garbrandt winning this fight. And then finally, flyweight. Brandon Royval versus Henry Cejudo. It's a dominating win for Henry Cejudo. It's a dominating win. He's going to maul him. And when we've seen Royval, I mean, I don't think Royval will get finished on the feet by Henry Cejudo. I mean, he did get finished by Brandon Moreno, but that is Moreno. And first of all, Henry is kind of, even though Henry's tiny, I do want to say he's oversized at flyweight. He's more of a bantamweight build. But Brandon Royval, he's going to get mauled by Henry Cejudo. If this fight was to happen, it would just be a pure fight of just pure mauling from Henry Cejudo, and I don't think Royval would beat him anywhere. I even think Cejudo would beat him on the feet, even though he might not get stopped by Cejudo on the feet and it might not be as dangerous. I can see Cejudo outputting him on the feet, but when it comes to grappling, I can definitely see him getting a finish in 2 rounds, whether it be by submission or TKO, because although it might not be, because Henry Cejudo, when he grapples, he does tend to grapple kind of with the mindset that I'm just going to lay on you and hope to get a decision win. He doesn't really kind of go for the finish that often, but I'm going to go with Henry Cejudo beating Brandon Royval comfortably. 100%. That's probably one of the easier picks on here. But that is UFC #1 contenders now versus 5 years ago. Let me know if you agree. Do you like these matchups? Are any of these matchups insane fights? But yeah, just let me know what you think, and thank you for watching.